Should encounter an emergency situation, we will exit the building from either of the doors off of the lobby. If for some reason those doors are not available, we will use the doors behind us in council chambers. Our muster point is located near the gazebo in Lions Park, and we will not re-enter the building until we are given an all clear from staff. I would like to make an amendment to the agenda, just to be difficult. I actually think that we can remove item 3C because it's contained in item number 4, and that would be a better place for part of that discussion. But would someone like to adopt the agenda as amended with the removal of C? Councillor Rilling? Wonderful, thanks for that motion. All those in favor and opposed? That is carried unanimously. Let me start this meeting with a little bit of the intention behind it. We really just wanted to make sure there was a couple key items, and much of it we'll do in closed session because it has to do with personnel, but wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to give a little bit of direction around a couple of these items on what council's wishes going forward. So the first one on our agenda is the municipal strategic plan. Dawn has had a chance to read this, to see this. But we have had some lingering conversations about what do we want our strat plan process going forward. One of my requests was that we have a bit of a wrap-up conversation, and with that will come a request that we kind of talked about, but not with our new CAO in place, that I'd love to schedule some time in June that we can have a bit of a wrap-up conversation around our strategic plan and just see where we've hit. But this is also our opportunity to do a bit of brainstorm and give some light direction on what should next year's strat planning process look like, because she'll need to start planning that for the next council, whether it's us or not. And we certainly want to do that not too long after the election, you know, within 6 months or so. So I guess I'll just open the floor on this item. Council, do you have any thoughts around things that you'd like to see going forward in that process? Councillor Cindy.
I could start. I was reviewing a few of the notes as typical, and I was thinking about how the strategic plan, what does it reflect, and you know, what are we trying to reflect in it, and then again, what documents come out of it, like budget, for instance, should reflect strategic plan. But what goes into it, I was thinking a lot about our master plans and how we often, you know, we always talk about the royal commissions in our country, and then they make a nice report and then they go off onto a shelf and become dusty. And I was thinking about how do master plans fit into strategic plan when we do all that work and we figure out what are the key ideas behind, for instance, you know, some of the infrastructure or transportation systems, or the very last one I believe we approved was parks, recreation, and open spaces. And we're about to launch in, or we all have already, admin has launched into the social master plan. How do key ideas from that enter strategic plan? So I was thinking about conversations around building the strategic plan could reflect some of those thoughts too, so that they don't get lost. So that was one sort of new idea in my head. So I'll share that thought and then jump into more conversation later.
I'll jump in with just some of my process thoughts. I think that this is obviously a priority to us. We've said that through many other documents. I think we need to make sure we allocate the right time to do it. And for me, that looks like a real deep dive, probably over 2 days. When you first develop the strategic plan, I'm interested in what that looks like, having an external consultant guide us through that process to ensure that we have what we need to receive the updates that we need on the strategic plan. And I think every year we need a minimum of a half-day workshop that is just around strategic planning. And that would just be a brush up for years follow of where we're going. Has anything major changed? We shouldn't be redoing the strategic plan every time. But we would have accomplished a couple of the goals, and just making sure that that's planned into our annual schedule, that council knows that every, I don't know if it's every early spring or every fall or every time of year throughout your term, that you'll have an opportunity to just spend some time together with the document. And likely that would involve, of course, bringing someone in to facilitate that initial conversation, but probably the update, because I think that just helps keep us on track. I loved how we did much of the process, having internal staff help us with that. And I hope that there's a real way to keep that involvement. But what I do like about having at least some external advice is I think an outsider has an easier job putting council in their place to make sure we get to where we need to go at the end of it. It is much easier for someone external to us to say, look, if you want to get a document at the end of this and we want to get where we need to go, wrap it up, guys. Or this isn't in alignment with what you've already been talking about. And I appreciate being able to bring that element to it as well.
Over the years, we've had lots of facilitators, and some worked really well, and then we had that one failure there, and that's set us back a little bit. But strategic plan is one, like our advocacy items, we revisit those every committee as a whole. Strategic plan is quite a public document, so I think that at least once a year we should go reviewing it and updating it, just similar to advocacy stuff. So.
And I actually, oh, yes, Councillor
I
Ridley.
really like the idea of it not just being, look at the document, see what you think. I think to revisit it means to actually take the time to, okay, and go point by point, you know, action plan, all action items, all of those sorts of things. Is this realistic anymore, or is it complete? If it's complete, where do we want to go? You know, and I think that's really good. Like, I mean, initially 2 days where you're really thrashing it through. And I mean, I would encourage to go away to do that personally. I mean, I'm not going to be part of that this next go around, but because there's just something about being away to really, that's what you go to do. Just an idea, and I think I can suggest that because I'm not part of it. But, and secondly, the idea of a half day every year where it's scheduled in, this is when we're going to revisit it all. And I think that's really good for admin too, to know, okay, so now we're gonna review, but it's not just a look at it, this looks okay, good job. It's, we're gonna really hash it through. And I think that's a really good idea, because otherwise, really, why do we do it?
Councillor Mearns.
Yeah, I would agree to step away, to be able to, you know, the initial strategic session to be away, and then we can be focused. I think it's really imperative that the review every year is done in a timely manner before budget season, so that council has an opportunity to see where we've been, what we've accomplished, if we want to give further direction, and then it would align with what comes forward to us in budget, so that that's top of mind for council as well as administration.
Absolutely. And also my other 2 cents, I certainly want to talk about it more than once a year. I'd like more regular reporting back on whatever that looks like in the future. In my mind, quarterly would be ideal. When we're getting quarterly financial statements, what a great time to have a quarterly strat plan update. But that's more of just an information type thing, whereas the annual is when you get to talk about it a little more, other than a quick question about, you know, the item that's on page 3. I just, yeah, would love to see it become a more living document for us. And I think that we've actually learned some neat lessons. A number of other communities have spent time in Sylvan Lake doing their strat planning, and always similar communities. And I've learned some really interesting things spending time with those that, you know, this isn't a Canmore. This is like a Stony Plain or a Wetaskiwin. Like, we certainly don't need to be far or be anywhere, we shouldn't actually be anywhere that is not at all comparable. But we've even done really successful strat planning going to Red Deer for 2 days. Just being a little, you know, making sure that we're all focused on it for that couple of days. But any other thoughts? Yeah, Councillor Dakin. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Can we put parameters if we're using a consultant that we want it back in 30 days? Because I've never experienced having a good strat plan session, so the only thing I know was when Kim did it. I love when Kim did it. I thought it was very efficient. She understood what we as a community needed. She did a great job. So yeah, can we put a parameter on that? Just saying, can we please have this back within 30 days?
I don't know what's reasonable for days, but yeah, I like putting
timelines.
The timeline.
Because I don't feel like we had a strat plan for 3/4 of our, if not half of our council. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, since there is a hole or a seat open, for sure, that it really gets explained to the new council member. I still didn't understand what it meant. And I was like, you know, oh, it's the biggest thing, the biggest changes you can make and the biggest power you have and whatever. But I didn't really understand that until after we were done the process. Then I'm like, oh, okay. So just explaining, you know, how it works, how it gives direction, the purpose of it, you know, really don't think that they know, but like really take time to go over and above explaining that.
And, you know, when I think of my most successful strat planning sessions, it's been one where I've had some of the questions ahead of time, the ones we were going to discuss. So, because you guys have heard me say it before, but I'm not a great on-the-spot thinker. That's when all the bad stuff comes out. I much prefer when I can take a week ahead of time and really mull through what are my ideas around these. So if we're able to provide that information to anyone ahead of time so that you can come in. There's still lots that I didn't think of ahead of time that you'll show up because brainstorming brings it out in you. But whatever we can do to, you know, allow you to really be prepared is helpful. Yeah. Councillor Oostende.
Another thought I was thinking about is we have key councillors on our advocacy goals, and I was wondering how would it look like, something to think about for the future, having key councillors on strategic goals, so that we had different people who kind of focused on parts of the strategic plan, and maybe they reported back somehow, or had conversations in between. You mentioned the word quarterly. Maybe it's quarterly, or when we have our committee of the whole, the advocacy spoke to you know, each one each time. I don't picture it each time myself, but is that the mechanism? I don't know. Like, I was just thinking about how do we make the document alive? Again, thinking about that report that sits on the shelf and gets dusty, and that's not the strategic plan, but how do we make it as live as possible? So that was
Neat
one
idea.
thought I had. We weren't getting into issues of the strategic plan, right? Just more the,
Just
how do we get
some
to this
process
next
on
growth,
direction.
growth and development of it. Yeah, and I like the idea of being away, maybe even, it's not every time, or the outside consultant isn't maybe every time. I know I've been far away in my past work, building up strategic plans, and also just up the road from here at a wedding center. You know, so, and we were, you know, physically located in Red Deer, so being up the road from here was getting out of town, but not really that far, you know, not expensive, et cetera, et cetera. But that getting out of your actual buildings, away from your, at least landlines, and then being disciplined about cell phones really does make a difference.
I think there's something just about that connection time too, that to know that at least once at the start of the term, you can just hash out ideas in a good place with, you know, having a few extra minutes around the meeting. Yeah.
We don't get together very often at all. Okay, so just like when Alberta Communities is in Red Deer, so at least once, you know, and I like that what Spruce Grove and those guys are doing, because they come in and they have a little social with the council that's there. I don't know where, that's why they come here though, is because it's Sylvan Lake. We're gonna go to Wetaskiwin.
I would be actually really
I've been to
interested in
Wetaskiwin. I like
you know,
Wetaskiwin, you know what I mean?
Wetaskiwin or in Innisfil, I don't know, but I bet you we could still learn a lot from a conversation with but I wouldn't, to be clear, I wouldn't want that away portion every time. For me, that's just the once, the beginning of the term, and then we in-house workshop it, you know, over a dinner or a half-day Saturday with lunch, the annual for me. Seeing agreements? Yeah, done.
I see that with the strategic priorities, there's objectives and outcomes, but was there ever an implementation plan where this is how administration thinks we can achieve these and reporting back, or was it just this is kind of our guiding document?
That's the piece that I think we're looking to have the
Okay.
next time. We
So an
have felt a little
implementation.
bit in limbo this time, and we've always had that before this term, but there's been, yeah, we've kind of missed that regular, the next step of the plan, really. And then in terms of direction to get together and have some, what do you need for us? Is June a reasonable timeline, or is there another month? I really don't want it September onward, and I know summer is harder to get people, but I would love to have a meeting that we can just go over where we've landed.
No, I think June would definitely work. Like an afternoon or a couple hours. What exactly, like, because you're talking about check-ins annually, half-day workshop. Do you want something like that, or more of a couple hours to summarize some reporting from staff, maybe on the achievements over the 4-year term, where
Yeah.
we think that we've, here are our objectives and our outcomes. Did we achieve these? Did we go above and beyond? Where did we,
Yeah, where's there some work to do, and
Yeah.
what has changed, maybe why we can't or haven't accomplished those?
Yeah.
Yeah,
have
that's
some
kind of the
directors
overview I'm looking
reporting
for at
and-
this point.
yeah.
We're not gonna start a new reporting structure at this point.
Yeah, just provide
when
some
we know a
info.
new one's coming, but
Yeah.
I would love to be able to know what was accomplished.
Okay.
So yeah, kind of
Couple
that,
hours?
afternoon, evening, whatever that looks.
Or evening, sorry, I
like for-
forgot, evening.
But it could be a little bit more than an evening, in my opinion, if we looked at the kind of time that we needed. It might need to start slightly earlier than, say, a 6 o'clock and trying to cram it in there. Yeah, it could be that kind of a wrap up, depending on how much time we think we'll need, but
Okay,
if we can start to look at that, I just didn't want that to be just my direction if council didn't feel there was value in that.
yeah.
Good. Okay, any other strategic planning questions or comments, just kind of on process?
I like Ian's idea.
Yeah. I think that'd be kind of, yeah. Okay. Advocacy priorities. I'm going between, are we a formal meeting or are we not? This is a discussion meeting, so we're going to go with first names for it. Dawn has been briefed on what our advocacy priorities are. She also knows that there's a good chance that some of those are shifting and changing. What I just wanted was, as I was capturing the things that like, what should all of council have an opportunity to update her on, was everyone that leads an advocacy item, especially if there's any real political stuff that's happened in the last couple months, if there's anything to update on. Some there may not be. Let's do that. Tim, we'll start with you on tourism.
I guess I don't know what Dawn's been updated on, is probably the gap. I guess the latest, and you may have been at the committee of the whole when I spoke about it, just the shift of not really getting the approval from the minister on what it might look like to be a resort community and the funding behind that. So that's been the shift, and then I wasn't here for the strategy change, so I haven't seen what's come out of that either. But really, what we want to focus now on is really what do we need in Sylvan Lake to make it a destination where we're getting that recognition from the province, from Tourism Alberta, to put us on the map. And Megan, you can maybe add more to that, because I wasn't at those other meetings, but our focus originally was working with other communities, Banff, Canmore, Jasper, Drumheller, on trying to get that tourism destination classification, and that's really, we have shifted away from that based on what the minister has given direction on what he wants to do or doesn't want to do, so.
And I think to elaborate on that, it's not dead forever, that ask,
Right.
but we all know it's not going to be successful over the next 2 years. So how do we shift? We know at the end of the day, we are a community who experiences a lot of tourism pressures. We believe that the province should support that because we're doing great things for our provincial economy. How do we get some compensation for that? Whether it's recognition, whether it's financial, I hope it's financial. How do we help level that playing field to other communities that aren't providing the service that what we do? But we know we need to change gears because current strategy, unsuccessful. I think we still have great friends in the communities that we've connected with, and that's still a link we'll keep, because in 2 years from now, that will probably pipe up again, but not in the same way right now. Yeah. Healthcare? Anything?
You were probably updated from our advocacy discussion with Betty, correct? Yes. And there's really not been anything since then. I haven't had any conversations even with people. So, I mean, we're really just looking to figure out what and where to go next, like with a kind of a, because we've seen, like, we don't need to, we haven't any enclosures, and that was really the biggest advocacy point that we had. But now I would say that we're going more in the direction that we want more hours instead of less, and certainly no cut in any of those hours. That's basically what I think the conversation has been since that time. Do you want to add to that?
No, that's about it. I think we kind of have two streams when it comes to healthcare, and they're very different, although they're both healthcare, so sometimes we merge the two of them. One is that direct advocacy side, and that's where I think we need to redefine what the goal is, what's our community need. In my opinion, it's probably that we reclassify that center from ambulatory care to actual urgent care, and that would come with it some additional hours, some additional services, some additional pay for the folks that work there, which would help do all kinds of things. But we're working on redefining that. The secondary part of that is that we have this healthcare appreciation and retention, attraction and retention team. There we go. Team, and that's a community committee that Teresa and I both sit on. And their focus is more, how do we, one, when a doc comes to town and they're interested in Sylvan Lake, how do we roll out the red carpet and make them really love us here, which we've been very successful at because we're great, so I'm not surprised. But also, how do we appreciate those physicians that are currently working in town and ensure that they really see the benefits of living in Sylvan Lake and know that our residents appreciate them, because online, I'll share this example with all of council, but I spoke to a physician who was considering us and another community who I will not name. They were between the two of us coming internationally, and they Googled healthcare, other community, and they had recently declared a healthcare crisis in that community. And then they Googled healthcare Sylvan Lake, and it came up, wow, the red carpet is rolled, and they do this great little bus tour and all these great things. And they ended up choosing Sylvan Lake versus another community because of the way that we have put ourselves out there, and because we've made it so public how much we appreciate those that work in that industry in Sylvan Lake. And I think that's a really great testament for the work that committee is doing, that if we keep spreading the good news, more is coming to us rather than declaring the opposite, that we are in crisis here. Why would you want to come here if that's the work you're going into, if it looked like you're walking into a disaster that's about to implode? So it does more of that soft work around it. They do not do the advocacy work. That is the work of town council, but we overlap sometimes because it's hard not to. So, and we get some great advice and recommendations from that committee too. A lot of the people in that committee were the ones involved in bringing ambulatory care to Sylvan Lake. So they are great movers and shakers of our community, which is pretty neat to still have that resource. And then the last one we have on the books is is high school. Councillor Payne had something come up tonight, so he's not able to be here, but that one I think was pretty exciting that we got pre-design funding in the books, and I know that you have been briefed on some of the work that we have to do to get ready for that, but I know we've got a lot of work coming in the next, really before September, to get some of their checklists done so that we could be eligible for the next round of funding. And the advocacy ask will just be, you gave us pre-design funding, how do we ensure that we get actual design funding next year, so that we can just move down the train of a build, because we definitely need a new high school. But there's pretty regular meetings on that committee that are happening, and I think great things are happening, but we certainly shouldn't let off the pressure, because there's a real risk that you get this pre-design funding and maybe it's 4 years before you ever get actual design funding. We certainly don't want that. So we want to make sure that it's known every conversation that we get to. Yeah, Ian.
I'll throw in a thought. It's not so much a revamp like healthcare and the resort town portfolios, But if we get to, or get closer to that point of, yes, we're building, the idea of advocating for the partnership or the needs that are required to build the partnership with the school boards, if we have joint use facilities, if I just leave it at that and say, that might twist our angle for that portfolio.
Yeah. Anything else on advocacy? All right, let's get to the bulk of our meeting. Who would like to move us in close? Oh, Ian.
One separate thing, when you look at our current advocacy goals online, it still shows the 4, including victim services, and speaks about, you know, as one is done, it is then replaced, and I don't, there's 2 things incorrect with that. First of all, there shouldn't be 4. It should say, if the 4th one should just say completed, and then in even high school could have a success note there added. But the idea of that, we're not necessarily replacing each time we finish one.
No.
In fact, we don't have a magic number. So that was one thought I just thought I'd put out there right now. We
Good
need
point.
to update our
How do we make sure we
document.
update what is public about that? And
Yeah.
some communities do such a great job of sharing their advocacy goals in such a clear way that their residents become part of that advocacy. I like a dream, that's where we'll get to, is that we also can so easily and concisely share the same facts with our residents that they also are the ones sharing the same information and that they are up to date on anything that's happening on it. So, yeah, good point. Councilor Mearns?
I make a motion the council move to close meeting to discuss a personnel matter, and that decision shall remain confidential pursuant to section 24(1)A of the Freedom of Information and Protection Act, RSA 2000 CF 25, and section 197(2) of the Municipal Government Act, RSA 200 C.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Let's head to the back.
I move that the closed meeting concludes and council reverts back to a special meeting of council.
Excellent. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried unanimously. We've reached the end of our agenda and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.